Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
At breakfast, when I told my husband that I wouldn't give the money my parents had set aside for our child's future to fund his mother's round-the-world trip, he became furious and trashed the entire house in a rage. Then he grabbed me by the hair and growled, "Transfer 1 million pesos to my mother right now, or I'll throw you off the balcony." I barely managed to escape. And in the evening, when he came back from work with his mother, they were stunned by what they saw. Hello, dear listeners. Today, we'll dive into a gripping story of trust, betrayal, and a mother's fight for her child's future. This is a tale about a woman whose intuition and determination helped her uncover family secrets and protect what rightfully belonged to her son. Get ready for a story full of unexpected twists, where truth clashes with greed, and a mother's love proves stronger than any threat. Enjoy listening and stay healthy. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button so you won't miss new stories. I've always trusted my intuition, and right now, it was screaming that something was wrong. For the past 2 weeks, Valentino had been acting overly attentive, helping with dinner, asking about my day, even bringing flowers without a reason. For a man who usually only noticed me when he needed a shirt ironed, this behavior was suspicious. Little Arturo was sleeping in his crib while I sat at the kitchen table, sorting through documents. A bank statement lay in front of me, 1 million pesos from my parents for their grandson's education. Mom and Dad had sold their summer house just for this. "Let the boy have a good future," Dad had said, handing me the envelope with the banking details. Liliana. Valentino appeared at the kitchen door, coffee cup in hand. "You're still up?" "Just sorting some paperwork," I replied without looking up. "I need to stop by the bank tomorrow." He came closer. I could feel him looking over my shoulder. "What's this statement?" His tone was too casual. "From my parents, for Arturo's education." Valentino froze. I caught a glimpse of tension in his posture. "How much is it?" he asked, trying to sound indifferent. "Enough to ensure he gets a good education." He nodded and left the kitchen, but I noticed him lingering by the door, like he wanted to say something. My instincts were on high alert again. The next day, I decided to follow my gut. Valentino left for work at the usual time, but instead of going to the bank, I returned home. I parked in the next courtyard and tiptoed upstairs. Voices came from the living room. Valentino and his mother, Dolores, were in a heated discussion. "My dear son, I'm telling you, that money is just sitting there. The child doesn't need it now, but I do. I need treatment. The doctor said only European resorts can help." "Mom, do you understand? Liliana's not as naive as she seems. She might refuse." "Then you need to be smarter. You're a man, the head of the family. Your word is law." I pressed myself against the hallway wall. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure the neighbors could hear it. What if she finds out we're monitoring her accounts? Valentino's voice was uneasy. "How would she know? Your friend at the bank is reliable. Andres won't spill a word." Andres Morales, Valentino's classmate who worked at our bank. So they really were watching my finances. A chill ran down my spine. "Mom, that's a lot of money." "Exactly. With that, I could not only get treatment, I could see the world. At my age, every day counts." Dolores spoke as if the money were hers. I clenched my fists. That woman always acted like the world owed her something. After her husband died, she moved in with us and had been living off us ever since, constantly criticizing my lifestyle. "Listen, maybe I shouldn't pressure Liliana so much." Valentino sounded uncertain. "Sweetheart," her voice softened, but also turned sly, "you know how much I love you. I devoted my whole life to raising you right. And now, when I need your help, would you really turn your back on your own mother?" "Of course not, Mom." "Then find a way to convince your wife. Tell her it's a loan. I'll pay it back when I get my pension." I almost laughed out loud. Dolores had been retired for 5 years already, and her pension barely covered essentials. "Okay, Mom, I'll figure something out." They fell silent. I heard the TV turn on. The conversation was over. Quietly, I crept back downstairs and got into my car. My hands were trembling as I started the engine. So, that's how it was. They were monitoring my money through Andres Morales, planning to force me to hand over the inheritance my parents had saved for their grandson, and they thought I had no idea. I tried to go about my day, but I couldn't focus. During lunch, I stopped at a nearby internet cafe and started researching my legal rights. I wrote down numbers for legal consultations and addresses of stores that sold hidden cameras. That evening, I acted normal at home, cooked dinner, played with Arturo, discussed Valentino's workday. But inside, I was seething. How dare they? How dare they plan behind my back how to spend my parents' money? Dolores was sitting in her armchair, watching a soap opera. From time to time, she gave me meaningful looks, as if waiting for me to offer her money for treatment. Liliana, she said during dinner, you know, I was talking to our neighbor Isabel yesterday. She told me her son took her to Europe for treatment. Said it helped a lot. Good for them, I replied briefly. Yes, young people these days are so caring, they understand that parents won't be around forever. Valentino looked up from his plate and glanced at me expectantly. I kept eating, pretending I didn't catch the hints. The next morning, after my husband left for work and my mother-in-law went to the clinic, I took Arturo and drove to the city center. At an electronics store, the sales consultant showed me several models of hidden cameras. Is this for home security? He asked. Something like that, I replied. I chose 3 small cameras with good resolution and audio recording. The salesperson explained how to install and configure them. The key is to choose the right spots. Where do the important conversations usually happen? In the living room, kitchen, and hallway. Then I suggest installing the cameras to cover the largest area possible, and be sure to check the sound quality. Modern models record audio very clearly. I paid in cash and asked him not to issue the receipt in my name. He nodded knowingly. At home, I quickly installed the devices, one hidden behind a photo frame in the living room, another behind a decorative vase in the kitchen, and the third behind the hallway mirror. I checked everything via the phone app. It all worked perfectly. Arturo was asleep in his stroller while I worked. He didn't yet understand what was happening around him, but I was doing it all for his future. That evening, when Valentino came home from work, I greeted him as usual, kissed him, asked about his day, offered dinner. He seemed tense, like he was preparing for an important conversation. Liliana, he said as we sat down to eat, I need to talk to you. I'm listening. You see, my mom isn't feeling well. The doctors say she needs serious treatment. I kept eating without looking up. What are the doctors suggesting? Therapeutic resort treatment, ideally abroad. I see. And how much does it cost? Valentino hesitated. Well, it's pretty expensive, but Mom worked her whole life. She deserves proper treatment. Valentino, give me the number. Around 1 million pesos. Maybe a bit more. I put down my fork and looked at him. 1 million pesos? For treatment? Yes, but it's for Mom's health, he said with exaggerated emotion, like he was reciting a rehearsed speech. And where exactly are we supposed to get that kind of money? Valentino swallowed hard. Well, we still have what your parents gave us. You mean the money my parents gave specifically for their grandson's education? Liliana, the child doesn't need it right now, and Mom needs treatment urgently. I stood up from the table. Valentino, that money is strictly for Arturo. I have no right to spend it on anything else. But Mom could die, he raised his voice. Your mom has health insurance. If her condition is truly serious, she can get free treatment. Free treatment is not the same as European resorts. There it was. He slipped up, not treatment, but resorts. So it's not about life-saving care, it's a vacation. Valentino realized he'd said too much. Liliana, don't twist my words. What matters is that Mom needs help. Valentino, I'll say it one more time, The money is for our son's education. Period. He stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door. Half an hour later, I heard him on the phone in the bedroom. He was speaking quietly, but the walls in our house aren't thick. Mom, she's refusing. Yes, I tried. No, she won't listen. Okay, we'll try something else tomorrow. I smiled. Tomorrow they get a surprise. Everything they say is now being recorded. The next morning, I called a legal consultation and booked an appointment. Lawyer Elena Moreno listened to my story attentively. The money your parents gave specifically for the child's education is considered earmarked. Spending it for anything else without the donor's consent is not allowed, she explained. And if my husband insists? Do you have documents proving the purpose of the funds? Yes, my parents notarized everything. Then legally, you are protected. But I recommend documenting all attempts to pressure you, record conversations, get witnesses. I'll have recordings. Elena Moreno nodded. Good. If the situation escalates, call me immediately. I'm ready to represent you. I left her office feeling confident. I was ready for whatever came next. At home, a surprise was waiting for me. Colorful brochures from travel agencies lay on the table, top resorts in Europe, treatments in Switzerland, exclusive wellness programs. Dolores was sitting on the couch flipping through a catalog. Liliana, look how beautiful this is. She showed me a photo of a luxurious hotel. Now that's where you can truly recover your health. It's very beautiful, I agreed. And I'm sure it's very expensive. Oh, don't be silly, dear. Health is worth more than money. True. That's why it's better to invest in our grandson's health. A good education is an investment in his future. Dolores' face darkened. The child is only one. School is still far off. Exactly, and good money tends to grow if invested wisely. That evening, when Valentino came home, Dolores called a family meeting. Kids, she began solemnly, I need to have a serious talk with you. We sat in the living room. I discreetly checked the camera. The red light was blinking. Everything was working. You know my health isn't great, Dolores continued. The doctors insist I need expensive treatment. Maybe you should get a second opinion, I suggested. There's a great regional hospital. Liliana, I've already seen every doctor in the city. They all say the same thing, I need to go to Europe for treatment. All of them say specifically Europe? I asked. Not a mountain or seaside sanatorium? Dolores hesitated. Well, European medicine is more advanced. I see. And exactly what illness requires treatment only in Europe? I have heart problems and joint pain. Mom, where are the test results? Valentino asked suddenly. I looked at my husband in surprise. Was he starting to have doubts too? Son, you know I don't like keeping medical documents at home. They're all with the doctor. But you'll need documents to travel abroad. Valentino insisted. Dolores clearly hadn't expected such questions from her own son. Of course, I'll get everything in order once the money for the trip is ready. At that moment, I understood, the woman was bluffing. She didn't have any serious illness, she just wanted a European vacation at someone else's expense. Dolores, I said calmly, what if we first get an accurate diagnosis and a treatment plan, then we'll talk about funding. Liliana, are you saying you don't trust me? I trust documents, medical reports, diagnoses, doctors' recommendations. My mother-in-law rose from the couch. I see I'm not respected in this house. My own daughter-in-law demands proof, like I'm some kind of scam artist. Mom, calm down, Valentino tried to intervene. No, son. Now I see what kind of wife you have, greedy and heartless. Willing to let her mother-in-law suffer over some money. Dolores stormed off to her room, slamming the door behind her. We were left alone. Liliana, maybe she's right? Valentino said quietly. Maybe we shouldn't ask for documents? Valentino, we're talking about 1 million pesos. I have every right to know exactly what I'm spending it on. But it's my mother. Exactly, and for that reason, you need to make sure she's really ill and not just trying to take a luxury trip on our dime. Valentino fell silent. I could see the doubt growing in him. The next day brought another twist. I was working from home. I had taken the day off to be with Arturo. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. "Hello, this is Dream Travel Agency. We're calling about your booking." "I'm sorry, but I didn't make any booking." "What do you mean?" "We have a request from Dolores for a European tour. She listed your number as the contact." My heart sank. "What kind of tour?" 28 days, Italy, France, Switzerland. 5-star hotels, transfers, guided excursions. "When was the reservation made?" 3 days ago. The client paid a 25,000 peso deposit and said the rest would be paid within a week. I barely managed to stay calm. "I see. And where did you get my number?" "Senora Dolores said you were her daughter-in-law and would be handling the payment." "Thanks for the information." I hung up and leaned against the wall. So Dolores hadn't just dreamed of the trip, she had already booked it and taken out a loan for the deposit, fully expecting me to cover the rest. That evening at dinner, I decided to test my suspicions. "Dolores, have you decided which clinic you'll go to for treatment?" "Not yet, dear. First we need to sort out the money." "And where did you get 25,000 pesos for the deposit at Dream Travel Agency?" She went pale. Valentino looked up from his plate, staring at his mother. "Mom, what travel agency?" I was just checking prices." "Checking prices and paid a 25,000 peso deposit?" I pressed on. Dolores realized she was caught. "Well, yes, I paid it." "So what?" "Good tours sell out quickly." "Mom," Valentino was in shock, "where did you get 25,000 pesos?" "I took out a loan at the bank." "A loan? At what interest rate?" "That's not important. What matters is I booked a great tour in time." I looked at my husband. He was stunned, as if only now realizing who he was dealing with. "Valentino, your mother took out a loan based on the assumption we'd give her our money. Now that debt is hanging over our family." "Liliana, it's not that bad," Dolores tried to defend herself. "Once you give me the money for the trip, I'll pay it off right away." "And if we don't give you the money?" Dolores faltered for the first time. "What do you mean, don't give it? You can't just leave me with this debt." "We can. It's your loan. You'll repay it." "Son," she turned to Valentino, "you won't let your own mother suffer, will you?" Valentino was silent. I could see the conflict raging in his mind. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, why did you take out a loan without even talking to us first? I thought you'd understand." "You see, Mom, now we have no choice. Either we pay for your vacation or you're left with the debt." "But I'm your mother." "Exactly. Which is why you should have considered the consequences." Dolores began to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse, they were tears of anger that her plan had failed. That night, I lay awake. The situation was getting worse. My mother-in-law was now in debt, counting on my money to bail her out. Valentino was torn between his wife and his mother, and I realized this was far from over. The next day, the third turning point happened. I decided to check our joint savings account and went to the bank. What I learned shocked me. 150,000 pesos were missing. The last transaction was 3 days ago, right when Dolores made the deposit for the tour. I asked for a printed statement for the past 6 months. The picture was horrifying. Valentino had been regularly withdrawing small amounts, in total, almost 250,000 pesos. "Excuse me," I asked the bank clerk, "who has access to this account?" "According to the agreement, it's a joint account. Either spouse can manage the funds." So Valentino had been secretly spending our family money on gifts for his mother for half a year, and I had no idea. That evening, I confronted him. "Valentino, where did your mother get the money for the loan?" I don't know, maybe she saved up? She saved up 150,000 pesos from her pension? He hesitated. Maybe she had a side job? Valentino, I placed a bank statement in front of him, explaining these transactions. He looked at the paper and turned pale. Liliana, I can explain. Go ahead. Mom sometimes asked for help, for medicine, clothes. Medicine and clothes worth that much? Well, she wanted quality things. Valentino, you've been robbing our family for 6 months. I didn't rob anyone. She's my mother. And who am I? What about our son? Valentino didn't know what to say. How much more have you given her? I pressed. How much has she manipulated out of you? Liliana, don't talk like that. I will talk like that. Your mother is feeding off our family like a parasite. She lives in our apartment, eats our food, spends our money, and now she wants to take my parents' inheritance too. She's sick. She's healthy as a horse. And you know it. Valentino stood up from the table. I won't let you talk about my mother like that. And I won't let you waste our child's money on your mommy's whims. He slammed the door and locked himself in his room. I stayed in the kitchen, firm in my decision. This couldn't go on. That night, I made up my mind. I had to take decisive action. The next day, I went to the electronics store and bought 2 more cameras for our bedroom and Dolores's room. I installed them while the house was empty. Now I was fully prepared. Every word, every plan, every act of pressure would be documented. Let them try to take my son's future. I wasn't the naive wife anymore who trusted her husband with the family finances. I was a mother, protecting her child's interests, and I was ready to fight to the end. The next 2 weeks turned into a cold war. Valentino barely spoke to me, limiting himself to the bare minimum. Dolores walked around with a sour face, sighing loudly and muttering about the ingratitude of today's youth. But I was no longer the submissive daughter-in-law who endured everything for the sake of peace. Every whisper, every glance, every word was recorded on my cameras, and with each passing day, the evidence piled up. On Wednesday morning, while I was feeding Arturo breakfast, the intercom buzzed. At the door stood our neighbor, Esperanza from the 3rd floor, the local gossip who knew more about the building's residents than the property manager. Liliana, dear, she began with a fake smile, do you have a moment? I invited her into the kitchen. Esperanza glanced around as if searching for fresh material for neighborhood chatter. You know, sweetie, I ran into your mother-in-law at the store yesterday. She looked so upset. Really? I continued feeding my son, trying to sound indifferent. She said she's having health problems and that her family refuses to help with treatment. Such a heartbreaking story. I set down the spoon and looked at her. Esperanza, what exactly did Dolores tell you? Well, she said the doctors insist on treatment in Europe, but her greedy daughter-in-law won't spend the money to help her poor mother-in-law. Inside, I was boiling, but I stayed calm. I see. What else did she say? That you have a lot of money sitting around, and she might die because her own family won't help. Esperanza was clearly hoping I'd start explaining or defending myself, but I remained silent. Liliana, maybe you should reconsider? She is an elderly woman. Thank you for your concern, Esperanza. But we'll handle our family matters ourselves. Esperanza realized the conversation was over and left, clearly disappointed. But I knew this was just the beginning. Dolores had decided to pressure me through public opinion. That evening, when Valentino came home, I told him about our neighbor's visit. Your mother is sharing our private matters with outsiders, I said calmly. What's wrong with that? People can see she's upset. Valentino, she's telling the neighbors that I'm greedy and heartless. Doesn't that bother you? Maybe you should think about your behavior. I stared at him in disbelief. My behavior? I'm refusing to spend my parents' money on a luxury vacation disguised as a treatment. Is that the problem? Liliana, come on, Mom really is sick. Then let her show medical documents, test results, doctor's notes, official recommendations. You know she doesn't like going to doctors. Yet somehow, every doctor in town supposedly told her to get treatment in Europe. Valentino had no answer. I could see he was starting to doubt his mother's words, but he wasn't ready to admit it out loud. The next day, things escalated. I spent the whole day at home with Arturo. Around lunchtime, Dolores came and said she'd invited her friend Nina over. Nina turned out to be a heavy-set woman in her 60s, with a hard stare and a habit of speaking in harsh, absolute phrases. "So you're the daughter-in-law?" she snapped the moment she stepped inside. "Hello," I replied politely. "Dolores told me everything. How can you not be ashamed? Your mother-in-law is dying, and you're pushing her into the grave over money." I felt a wave of anger rising, but I held it back. "Excuse me, but you don't know the full story." "What is there to know?" "An elderly woman asks for help, and her family turns their backs on her." Dolores sat beside her, nodding, playing the tragic victim. "Nina," I said firmly, "if Dolores is truly ill, let her provide documents proving her diagnosis." "What documents? Can't you see she's suffering?" I looked at my mother-in-law. She did look tired and pale. But I knew it was stress from her failed scheme, not illness. "She's clearly upset," I agreed. "But being upset isn't the same as having a serious medical condition." "You're heartless," Nina suddenly screamed. "You have a stone where your heart should be." "I have common sense," I replied calmly. "How dare you?" Nina was furious. "Dolores spent her life raising your husband, working her hands to the bone, and now, when she needs help, her own family abandons her." "Nina," I said as steadily as I could, "Dolores lives in our home for free. We provide everything she needs. But I will not spend our child's inheritance on her luxury getaway." "Getaway? It's treatment. Show me the medical records, and we'll talk treatment." Nina opened her mouth to argue, but Dolores stopped her. "Enough, Nina. You see what kind of daughter-in-law I have? What can you expect from someone like her?" Nina left, slamming the door. Dolores stayed behind on the couch, looking like a martyr. "Liliana," she said after a pause, "do you realize what you're doing? You're turning everyone against you. I'm protecting my family's interests." "What family?" "Valentino and I are your family too. Family is built on mutual respect and honesty, not schemes to steal money under the pretense of illness." Dolores stood and walked to the window. "You know what? My son is too kind. He lets you walk all over him. Your son is a grown man. He can make his own decisions. Maybe not everything. Sometimes men need help understanding what's best for them." There was a threat in her voice. I realized she was now going to influence Valentino more aggressively. And sure enough, that very evening, my husband came home in a hostile mood. "Liliana, I'm sick of this situation," he announced as soon as he walked in. "So am I." "Then let's settle it once and for all." "Let's. Let your mother bring medical documents, and we'll talk about treatment." "Stop demanding documents. I can see with my own eyes that she's unwell." "Valentino, 1 million pesos is a serious amount. I have the right to know what I'm spending it on. It's my family's money." "No. It's money my parents gave specifically for their grandson's education. Legally, I can't use it for anything else." Valentino sat down at the table and let out a heavy sigh. "Liliana, I'm tired of all these arguments. Make a decision, either you give Mom the money, or we'll have to reconsider our relationship." My heart sank. Was this really an ultimatum? "What do you mean, reconsider our relationship?" "It means I can't live with a woman who hates my mother." "I don't hate your mother. I just don't want her spending my parents' money on her whims." "These aren't whims. It's medical treatment." "Then let her prove it." Valentino jumped to his feet. "That's it, Liliana. I've made my decision. Tomorrow, you transfer the money to my mom, or I'm filing for divorce." I stared at my husband like he was a stranger. Was this the same man I married? The one who once swore to love and protect me? And what about Arturo? I asked quietly. The child stays with me. I won't let a greedy woman raise my son. The world tilted beneath me. Valentino was threatening to take away my child, the baby I carried, gave birth to, and breastfeed every day. Valentino, you have no right to take my son away from me. I do. I'm his father and I can prove in court that you're an unfit mother. How? You're refusing to help a sick woman. You're showing cruelty and heartlessness. What kind of example is that for a child? Then it hit me, this was all part of a plan. Dolores didn't talk to the neighbors about my supposed greed for nothing. They were preparing a case to use against me in court. Valentino, think about what you're saying. You're going to destroy our family over money? I'm not destroying anything. You're the one choosing money over family. I'm choosing our son's future. The future of my son will be what I decide, not you. Valentino stormed off to his room. I remained alone in the kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. My husband was threatening divorce and custody of our child, all because I refused to fund his mother's fake medical treatment. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, thinking everything through. Valentino was serious. Tomorrow he'd demand a final answer, and if I refused, he'd start the divorce process. But I wasn't going to give in. The next morning, as soon as he left for work, I called my lawyer, Elena Moreno. I need an urgent consultation, I said. My husband is threatening divorce and wants to take my child. Come immediately, she replied. I took Arturo and went straight to the law office. Elena listened carefully as I told her everything. Liliana, from a legal standpoint, you're completely in the right. Funds given by your parents for a specific purpose can't be used otherwise without their consent. And what about the child? Can my husband take him? In theory, he can try, but in practice, courts almost never take small children away from their mothers, especially infants. You'll need to show that you're a good mother acting in your child's best interests. And his threats? Record everything. Gather proof of coercion and blackmail. That will help in court. I already have recordings. Elena nodded approvingly. Good. Then you're in a strong position. But be prepared, your husband may file as soon as tomorrow. I went home more determined than ever not to fall for their manipulations. If Valentino wanted war, he was going to get it. That evening, he came home earlier than usual. Dolores was with him, but clearly, they had a plan. Liliana, Valentino said, sitting down across from me, I'm waiting for your answer. My answer hasn't changed. The money is for Arturo's education. Then tomorrow morning I'm going to a lawyer. Go. He didn't expect such a calm response. Do you even understand what that means? Yes. It means you're choosing your mother's interests over your own son's. Mom is sick. Prove it. Dolores, who had been silent until now, stood up from the couch. Enough, she yelled. I won't let some upstart humiliate my family. Dolores, this is my apartment, I said calmly. And here, I make the rules. Your apartment? And what about my son? Is he nobody here? Your son is my husband. But that doesn't give you the right to spend my parents' money. I gave my whole life to that boy. I worked double shifts to raise him. And now that I need help, my own family turns their back on me. Dolores started crying, but I already knew the value of her tears. If you really need medical help, go to the clinic. They'll give you a referral for free treatment. Free treatment isn't real treatment. It's a joke. It's standard healthcare in this country. Millions of people rely on it. But I need special treatment. Then show the documents that prove it. Dolores realized she was caught. She couldn't show any documents because there weren't any. Valentino, she turned to her son, are you hearing how your wife talks to me? I hear you, Mom. And what are you going to do about it? Valentino looked at me, then at his mother. Liliana, this is the last time I'll ask. Will you give my mother the money? No. Then tomorrow I'm filing for divorce and seeking custody of Arturo. Dolores smiled triumphantly. She thought she had won. But I was no longer the woman afraid of threats. I stood up and looked them both in the eye. Go ahead. Just remember, I have proof of everything. Recordings of your conversations, documents about the loan, evidence of your attempts to deceive me under false pretenses. Valentino's face changed. What recordings? The ones where you and your mother discuss how to force me to hand over the money, where she admits she isn't sick and just wants a vacation in Europe. Dolores turned pale. You were eavesdropping? I was protecting my interests, and my son's. Valentino looked at his mother, then at me, confused. Liliana, what other recordings? All of your conversations over the last month, including your coercion plans, discussions about my finances with third parties, and attempts to turn the neighbors and relatives against me. Silence fell over the room. They both realized their scheme had collapsed. That's illegal. Dolores suddenly shouted. You can't record people without consent. Yes, I can, if it's inside my own home, I replied calmly. I have the legal right to install surveillance in my own apartment. Valentino sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. Dolores was pacing the room like a trapped animal. So you were deceiving us? Pretending to be the obedient wife while recording everything? I was defending myself from your deception. You were trying to steal my parents' money under the guise of a fake illness. Not steal or borrow. And with what were you planning to repay the loan? Your tiny pension? Dolores realized she had completely exposed herself. Valentino, I turned to my husband, you have two options, either stand with your family and stop enabling your mother's schemes, or tomorrow I'll file for divorce and present all the evidence of your manipulation and deceit. He lifted his head and looked at me. You're blackmailing me? I'm offering a fair choice, no lies, no extortion, no threats about taking my child away. Valentino was deep in thought. I could see the internal struggle between his loyalty to his mother and his sense of what was right. What if Mom really is sick? He asked quietly. Then she should provide medical documents, proper tests, doctor's conclusions, official treatment recommendations. And then we can discuss helping, within reason. Dolores understood she had lost. Valentino, are you really going to believe her, that snake, over your own mother? Mom, he said tiredly, bring the paperwork from the clinic tomorrow. If the doctors really recommend treatment abroad, we'll find a solution. Dolores realized even her son wasn't blindly on her side anymore. Fine, she hissed through her teeth. We'll see who's really in charge here. She stormed off to her room, slamming the door. Valentino and I were left alone. Liliana, he said after a long pause, maybe we took this all too far? Valentino, I just want honesty in our family, no secret plots, no lies, no manipulation. But what about Mom? Your mother is an adult. Let her live within her means and stop planning how to spend someone else's money. Valentino nodded. Okay. We'll see what she brings from the clinic tomorrow. But I already knew Dolores wouldn't bring any documents because there was no illness. Which meant tomorrow would be the next round of our battle. And I was ready. The next morning, Dolores didn't go to the clinic. She sat in the kitchen, sipping tea with a dark look on her face as I made breakfast. I'm not going anywhere, she snapped when I asked about the medical papers. I won't humiliate myself in front of some doctors. Then what kind of treatment are we talking about? I asked calmly. I need rest. I'm tired of this life, of constant stress. Finally, the truth. Not treatment. A vacation. At my expense. Dolores, rest and medical treatment are two very different things, and they cost differently. For an elderly person, rest is treatment. Valentino listened silently. I could tell he was finally starting to see the truth, that his mother had been lying all along. Mom, he said cautiously, what about a sanatorium in the mountains? They have good treatment programs too. The mountains? Dolores scoffed. That's where the poor go. I deserve better. And what makes you think you deserve it? I couldn't hold back anymore. Because I worked all my life, because I raised a son, because I help you with the child. Help? You live off us, eat our food, and now demand we pay for your luxury vacation. Dolores stood up from the table. Valentino, are you hearing how she talks to me? He looked at her, then at me. Mom, Liliana's right. If you're not actually sick, then there's no reason to ask for money for treatment. Dolores was stunned. For the first time, her son wasn't on her side. So both of you have betrayed me, she cried, clutching her chest. I'm having an attack. Then I'll call an ambulance, I offered, reaching for my phone. Don't you dare. Dolores shouted. I don't need an ambulance. But you said you're having an attack. She realized she'd been caught in another lie. I'm just stressed because of how you're treating me. Stress is treated with herbal tea, not with trips to Europe. Dolores stormed off to her room, slamming the door. Valentino remained at the table, staring into his cup. Liliana, he said quietly, I think I'm starting to understand. Understand what? That Mom really was lying to us. I stayed silent, giving him time to absorb the truth. But what do I do now? She's still my mother. Valentino, loving your parents doesn't mean giving in to all their demands. You can take care of your mother without destroying your own family. He nodded. You're probably right. It's just hard to say no to her. Then learn how, or she'll keep feeding off us for the rest of her life. That day brought the seventh turning point. That evening, while I was bathing Arturo, the phone rang. It was my mother. Liliana, I have a strange question, she said with concern. Elena just told me she saw your mother-in-law at the bank. Apparently, she was trying to get information about the account we used to transfer the money for Arturo. My heart skipped a beat. What exactly was she trying to find out? Elena works as a teller in that branch. She said your mother-in-law came in with some documents and demanded information about the account. Claimed she had a right to know about the family's finances. And what did they say? Nothing, of course. Without a power of attorney, no one can disclose account details. But Elena was surprised and thought I should know. I thanked my mom and hung up. So, Dolores wasn't just hoping to get the money, she was actively trying to figure out how to access it. When Valentino got home from work, I told him about the call. Your mother tried to get information about the account with Arturo's money, I said. His face darkened. Seriously? Very. Thank goodness the bank staff respects confidentiality. Valentino went into his mother's room. I heard them talking. Then Dolores's voice rose, and a few minutes later, he returned. Mom says she just wanted to know how much money we have in the family, he said wearily. And you believe her? Honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore. That night, something happened that finally shifted the balance of power. I got up to feed Arturo and heard strange noises coming from Dolores's room. I quietly approached the door. Dolores was whispering on the phone. Andres, please help me, she said. You can check how much is in the account. Andres Morales, the bank employee, Valentino's friend. I know it's illegal, but this is about my treatment, she continued. If my daughter-in-law won't help voluntarily, I'll have to do it another way. I turned on the recorder on my phone and listened. Okay, I get it's risky. But think about how many times Valentino has helped you, how many times he's bailed you out. Andres, please. I need to know the exact amount, just to know what I'm working with. I'm not asking you to steal it. Thank you, sweetheart. You're a true friend. I'll wait for the info tomorrow. I quietly returned to the bedroom. Now I had proof of her attempt to illegally access confidential bank data. This was far beyond a family argument. In the morning, I called Elena Moreno and told her about the late-night call. "Liliana, this is a clear attempt to breach banking confidentiality," said the lawyer. "Do you have the recording?" "Yes." "Excellent. Now you're not just on the defensive, you can go on the offensive. This is a criminal offense. What should I do?" "For now, nothing. Wait and watch. If they try to actually access the account or its information, call the police immediately." That evening, Dolores looked smug. She even gave me a sweet smile at dinner. "Liliana, let's not fight," she said in a conciliatory tone. "We're family, after all." "Of course," I said, fully aware that Andres had given her the info. "Maybe we can talk about my trip again. I'm willing to compromise." "What kind of compromise?" "Well, not a full $1,000,000. I'd settle for 500,000. So, she knew the exact balance, Andres had told her. "Dolores, my position hasn't changed. The money is for Arturo." Her face darkened. "All right, we'll see." The next day brought the 8th turning point. I was home with the baby when Elena, my mom's friend from the bank, called. "Liliana, I have bad news," she said, worried. "That employee, Morales, tried to access your account information." "How?" "He logged in using someone else's credentials to view the data. But the system flagged the violation, and he got caught. And now? He's been fired. And the bank management wants to know who asked him to do it." I thanked Elena and immediately called Elena Moreno. "Now you have full grounds to go to the police," the lawyer said. "Attempting to illegally access bank information is a criminal offense." "What will happen to Dolores?" "If her involvement is proven, she could get a suspended sentence. And your husband may also be held accountable if he knew about her plan." That evening, when Valentino came home, I told him the news. "Your friend Andres was fired for trying to access our bank account," I said. Valentino went pale. "Fired?" "He was caught trying to view our account data on your mother's request." He sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. "Liliana, I didn't know." "Valentino, this is a criminal case now. Your mother could be charged with attempted fraud." "What?" Dolores ran out of her room. Clearly, she had been eavesdropping. "What do you mean, a criminal case?" "One that will be opened for the attempted illegal access to private bank information." She tried to act shocked. "I don't know what you're talking about. I have a recording of your phone call with Andres Morales, where you asked him to break the law." Dolores opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Mom," Valentino asked quietly, "is that true?" "I just wanted to know." "You wanted to know someone else's bank information illegally," I interrupted. "That's called fraud." Dolores realized she was completely exposed. "What's happened to you all?" she shouted. "Back in the day, families had no secrets. All the money was shared. Back in the day, there were no privacy laws and no criminal code articles for breaching them," I replied calmly. Valentino stood and walked toward his mother. "Mom, how could you? Someone lost their job because of you. Andres agreed to help on his own. You pressured him, blackmailed him with your friendship through me." Dolores began to cry, but this time they were tears of despair, not manipulation. "I just wanted a break. I just wanted to live a little. At someone else's expense," I added. The next day, the situation reached a critical point. In the morning, Dolores received a police summons to give a statement about the bank incident. "What does this mean?" she asked, waving the paper. "It means the case is now official," I explained. "Valentino, do something. I can't go to the police." My husband looked lost. "Mom, what do you want me to do? You broke the law." "I didn't break anything. I just asked." "You asked a bank employee to violate internal policy. That's called incitement to commit a crime." Dolores realized she was losing control of the situation. "Liliana," she turned to me, "let's make a deal. I'll cancel the tour, repay the loan, and we'll forget all this nonsense. Too late, I said. It's already with the police. But you could withdraw the complaint. I didn't report anything. The bank did. Dolores saw she had backed herself into a corner. That evening, the 9th turning point happened. During dinner, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, this is Private Investigator Sergio Moreno. I was checking Dolores's credit history on behalf of the bank. I'm listening. I have unexpected information. Your mother-in-law has taken out large loans from other banks and hasn't paid them back. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, hasn't paid them back? She has several overdue loans totaling around 400,000 pesos. The banks have already filed lawsuits. And why are you telling me this? Because on one of the loan applications, she listed your family address and your husband as the guarantor. The room spun. Guarantor? He never signed anything. According to the documents, he did. Although the signature looks suspicious. I looked at Valentino. He was straining to hear what the call was about. Thank you for the information. Can you send me copies of the documents? Of course. I'll email them to you. I hung up and turned to my family. Valentino, have you ever been a guarantor on your mother's loans? No, never. Why? I told him about the call from the investigator. Valentino listened with his mouth open. How am I a guarantor? I never signed anything. Dolores sat frozen, pale as a sheet. Mom, Valentino said sternly, what does this mean? I just. You forged my signature? Dolores burst into tears. Son, I needed the money, and the banks wouldn't approve it without a guarantor. Mom, that's fraud. Forging documents is a crime. I thought I'd pay it back before you found out. Valentino buried his head in his hands. How much do you owe? Not much, just 400,000 pesos. Just 400,000 pesos? Son, if Liliana had given me the money for the trip, I would have repaid everything. I stared at this scene in horror. So Dolores had planned to pay off her debts with the money meant for Arturo's education. Valentino, I said calmly, now it's clear why your mother needed exactly 1 million pesos, 400,000 to cover her debts, and the rest for a European vacation. My husband looked at his mother in shock. Mom, you wanted to use my son's future to pay your debts? I wanted to fix my problems first, then think about the future. What future? My son won't have money for his education because of your selfishness. Dolores realized she had completely exposed herself. Valentino, help me. I'm your mother. You're the mother who forged my signature and dragged our family into debt. He stood up from the table and left for the bedroom. I remained in the kitchen with my mother-in-law. Liliana, she said quietly, what happens now? Now, what's supposed to happen? You'll answer for your actions. But what if I apologize? What if I change? Too late. Too many lies. Too much deceit. That night, Valentino and I barely slept. He was in shock over what had come to light. Liliana, I didn't know my mom was capable of this, he said. Well, now you do. What do I do? She's still my mother. Valentino, adults take responsibility for their actions, regardless of family ties. But 400,000 pesos in debt. Where am I supposed to get that? You don't owe it. She forged your signature, that means you're not legally responsible. And my mom? She'll be held accountable for document forgery, for fraud, for attempting to access banking information illegally. Valentino understood that his mother could end up in prison. Maybe we should warn her, give her a chance to leave. Valentino, that would make you an accomplice. Do you want to go to jail with her? He went silent. The next morning, what I'd been expecting finally happened. Valentino woke up in a terrible mood. He'd tossed and turned all night, and now he got up angry and agitated. Liliana, I've made a decision, he said as he sat at the table. Enough of this circus. You're transferring the money to my mom today. What money? I asked, continuing to feed Arturo. The money your parents gave us. Mom's in this mess because of your stubbornness. Valentino, your mom is in this mess because of her greed and stupidity. Don't you dare talk about my mother like that, he shouted, standing up so fast he knocked over his chair. Dolores peeked out of her room. What's going on? She asked. What's going on, he roared, is that Liliana is finally going to give you the money. I will not, I said calmly. Valentino grabbed a cup from the table and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, sending shards flying across the kitchen. You'll give it, he screamed. You'll give it right now. I will not. He stormed over to the sideboard and swept all the dishes onto the floor, plates, glasses, salad bowls, everything crashed down with a deafening noise. Valentino, stop. I yelled, clutching a terrified Arturo to my chest. I won't stop. He flipped the table. I won't stop until you give Mom the money. Dolores stood in the doorway, encouraging her son. That's right, Valentino. Show that stubborn woman who's the boss in this house. My husband moved to the living room and began destroying the furniture. He knocked over an armchair, threw books off the shelves, smashed vases. Transfer 1 million pesos to my mother right now, he shouted, still trashing the apartment. I won't. Valentino came back into the kitchen and grabbed me by the hair. Transfer it, or I'll throw you off the balcony, he growled, yanking painfully on my hair. I felt true fear. There was a wild rage in his eyes. He was capable of hurting me. Let go of me. I screamed, trying to break free. I won't. You're staying here until you transfer the money. Arturo began crying in terror. Valentino dragged me toward the computer to force me to log into the banking system. Valentino, let me go. You're scaring the baby. I don't care about the baby. Transfer the money to my mother. At that moment, I managed to pull away. I grabbed Arturo and ran to the door. Stop! Valentino shouted. Where do you think you're going? But I was already out of the apartment, running down the stairs. I got into the car and drove to Elena Moreno's office. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. At the lawyer's office, I told her everything that had happened. This isn't just a family fight anymore, Elena said firmly. This is domestic violence, plus death threats. You must report this to the police immediately. What about the security camera footage? Did it record everything? I checked the phone app. The cameras had captured the entire scene, the destruction, the threats, the abuse. Yes, it's all there. Perfect. Now we have solid evidence. We went straight to the police station. I filed a report for domestic violence and threats. I handed over the video recordings from the cameras. The investigator reviewed the footage carefully. These are serious offenses, he said. We're going to your residence immediately to document the damage and detain the suspect. When? Right now. We returned to my building. 2 police cars were parked outside. Elena Moreno walked beside me. Ready? She asked. Ready. That evening, when he returned home with his mother, they were stunned by what they saw. Valentino and Dolores arrived around 7, chatting about that morning. She'll come back, son, said Dolores. Where else can she go with a baby? I hope so, Mom. I don't know what to do otherwise. Just don't go easy on her. She needs to know who's in charge. They reached the door and saw it was open. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the threshold. Valentino Pascual asked the senior officer. Yes, that's me. What's going on? You are under arrest on suspicion of domestic violence and making threats to kill. Valentino turned pale. Threats? I didn't kill anyone. You threatened to throw your wife off the balcony. That qualifies as a death threat. But I didn't mean it. I was just angry. That's for the court to decide. The police put handcuffs on Valentino. Dolores stood nearby, stunned. "What's happening here?" she whispered. I came out of the apartment with Arturo in my arms, Elena Moreno by my side. "What's happening is what should have happened a long time ago," I said calmly. "Liliana." Dolores gasped. "What have you done?" "I protected myself and my child from domestic abuse." "What abuse?" Valentino was just upset. The second officer showed Dolores the tablet with the video recording. "See for yourself, your son was destroying furniture, grabbing his wife by the hair, and threatening to throw her off the balcony." Dolores saw the chaos on the screen and turned pale. "Valentino, did you really?" "Mom, I didn't mean to, I just lost it." "And now you'll answer to the law," the officer said. "Come with us." As they escorted Valentino away, he looked back at me. "Liliana, why the police? We could have sorted this out ourselves." "Valentino, when you grabbed me by the hair and threatened to kill me, you weren't thinking about sorting it out." Dolores remained standing on the stair landing. She looked at me with hatred. "You destroyed my family. Your family destroyed itself, with lies, deceit, and greed. So what now? Valentino goes to jail?" "That's up to the court," Elena Moreno replied, stepping forward. "And by the way, Dolores, the police are expecting you tomorrow as well, for questioning about the banking fraud." Dolores's face turned ashen. "What fraud?" "Forgery of your son's signature as a loan guarantor, attempted unlawful access to private banking data, and misleading financial institutions." "I didn't forge anything. We have a forensic report. Your son's signature on those loan documents is fake." Dolores realized she was caught once and for all. "Liliana, let's make a deal," she tried one last time. "I'll pay it all back. I'll change." "It's too late," I replied. "Far too late." We entered the apartment. Broken dishes lay everywhere, furniture overturned, belongings scattered. But the cameras had recorded every detail of what had happened. "The damage is significant," said the forensic investigator who stayed to file the report. "Rough estimate, around 100,000 pesos. Will that be compensated?" I asked. "If the court finds the suspect guilty, yes, he'll be required to pay restitution." That evening, after all the formalities were completed, I was left alone with Arturo in a wrecked apartment. The child was asleep, and I sat among the ruins of my former life. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Liliana, how are you? You haven't called in a while." "Mom, a lot has happened here." I told my parents everything that had occurred. My mother listened silently, occasionally gasping. "Sweetheart, you did the right thing," she finally said. "You can't let yourself be humiliated." "But what about Arturo? He's left without a father. Better no father than a violent one. A child shouldn't witness abuse in the home." My father took the phone. "Liliana, if you need anything, money or help of any kind, just call us immediately." "Thank you, Dad. I'm managing for now." The next day, the court process began. Valentino was brought in from temporary detention. He looked exhausted and confused. "Liliana," he said to me during a break, "maybe you could withdraw the charges?" "I won't." "But why?" I apologized. "Valentino, apologies don't erase beatings and threats." "But I didn't want to kill you. I was just angry." "If your anger can drive you to that, you're dangerous." Dolores was tried separately. During her trial, shocking details of her fraud came to light. She had been scamming banks for years, forging documents, taking out loans under false identities, and impersonating other people. "The defendant Dolores has engaged in systematic fraud," the prosecutor stated. "I just wanted a good life." Dolores protested. "Is that a crime?" "The crimes are the methods you used to try and get it." During the proceedings, even more disturbing facts came out. Elena Moreno conducted a deeper investigation and discovered that Valentino had already been charged with domestic violence in a previous marriage. Your Honor, my lawyer said to the judge, the defendant has a prior conviction for battery. He concealed this from his current wife. The judge reviewed the documents. Valentino Pascual, do you confirm your previous conviction? Valentino turned pale. Yes, I confirm, but it was a long time ago. When exactly? 3 years ago. But I've changed. Changed so much that you repeated the violence? Valentino didn't know what to say. I was in shock. So my husband had beaten his first wife, hid it from me, and now repeated it again. Why didn't you tell me? I asked him after the hearing. I was afraid you wouldn't marry me. And you were right to be afraid. I'd never have gotten involved with someone who beats women. Liliana, it's in the past. I've changed. Changed so much that yesterday you threatened to throw me off a balcony? Valentino realized he had completely exposed himself. Dolores's trial ended quickly. She was found guilty of fraud and sentenced to 3 years probation with mandatory repayment of damages. The defendant must repay 700,000 pesos to the banks within 5 years, the judge declared. Dolores burst into tears. Her dreams of a luxurious life in Europe turned into debts that would haunt her for life. Valentino was sentenced to 1 year of corrective labor, with 20% of his salary going to the state, and an obligation to pay me damages, both material and emotional. Furthermore, added the judge, the defendant is required to pay child support of 25% of his income. After the court ruling, I filed for divorce. Valentino tried to talk me out of it. Liliana, maybe we can give our marriage another chance. No. I don't want my son to grow up in a home where violence is normal. But I'll never lay a hand on you again. You told your first wife the same thing, and then beat her again. The divorce was finalized a month later. I was granted full custody of Arturo. Valentino was allowed visitation only on weekends and only in the presence of a social worker. 6 months later, I sold the destroyed apartment and bought a new one in a different area. I wanted a fresh start. The money from my parents remained untouched. In fact, I opened a savings account in Arturo's name and began setting aside money monthly for his education. Dolores tried to stay in touch with her grandson, but I strictly forbade her from coming near him. Liliana, surely you'll let a grandmother see her grandson, she begged over the phone. No. You and your son have proven yourselves untrustworthy. But the child isn't to blame. Exactly. That's why I'm protecting him from you. Valentino found a job as a loader, the only work he could get with a criminal record. Child support payments came regularly, but they barely covered the basics. Sometimes he called and asked to see Arturo. Liliana, I miss my son. Can I see him? Through the social service, as required by the court. But that's so humiliating. Valentino, you brought this on yourself. About a year and a half later, an unexpected meeting occurred. Valentino came for a scheduled visit sober, well-groomed, with toys in hand. Liliana, I've realized my mistakes, he said seriously. I'm seeing a psychologist and getting help for my aggression. That's good. Do you think, maybe one day, you could forgive me? I looked at my former husband. He really had changed. He seemed calmer, more reasonable. Valentino, forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. I can forgive you as Arturo's father, but I will never live with you again. I understand, he nodded. But, can I be a good father? If you prove you can be, yes. Now, 3 years have passed since those events. Arturo has grown up and started speaking his first words. Valentino pays child support regularly and now sees his son every weekend, without a social worker. The court lifted the restriction after 2 years. Dolores never managed to repay her debts to the banks. She was declared bankrupt, and her only room in a shared apartment was repossessed. Now she lives in a state-run nursing home. Sometimes she calls Valentino and complains about her life. Son, Take me out of here. I can't stand it anymore. Mom, I have a one-room apartment and a loader's salary. I can't support you. But I'm your mother. You're the mother who destroyed my family out of greed. As for me, I found a new job and met a good man. Diego is a doctor, divorced, with a daughter from his first marriage. We've been seeing each other for 6 months now. Liliana, he said to me recently, aren't you afraid of building a new family again? I am. But not enough to give up on happiness. And what if I turn out to be like your ex? Diego, I have experience now. I know how to recognize danger. The money from my parents is still sitting in Arturo's account. It has grown with interest and my monthly contributions. By the time my son turns 18, there will be a substantial sum saved for his education. Valentino knows about it. Liliana, thank you for keeping the money safe for our son. I made a promise to my parents, and I kept it. And if you had given it to my mother back then Arturo would have no future. Your mother would have had a few months of luxury, after which she'd be back in debt. Valentino nodded. You were probably right. I just realized it too late. Recently, Arturo said his first word, Mama. I cried with happiness. My little boy is growing up in an atmosphere of love and safety, no violence, no shouting, no manipulation for money. Sometimes I think back to those events 3 years ago, to the morning when everything changed. If I had given in to the blackmail and handed over the money, what would my life look like now? Dolores would have gone to Europe, burned through the entire sum, and returned with new debts. Valentino would still believe he was always right and continue to use violence whenever a conflict arose. And Arturo would be growing up in a family where lies and aggression were the norm. No, I don't regret my decision. I'd rather endure 3 difficult years fighting for justice than spend a lifetime in a home filled with deceit and fear. Now, I have a job I love, a man who respects me and would never raise a hand against me, and a son who is growing up to be a kind and principled young man. And my parents' money is still waiting for its purpose. When Arturo turns 18, he will be able to receive an excellent education, because I didn't let his future be wasted on someone else's whims. That is what true victory looks like, not loud or dramatic, but honest and just.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.